2014, and we're talking with retired Circuit Judge Charles T. Carlton. Judge, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you're from, where you grew up, that sort of thing.
First of all, please call me Charlie.
Okay, Charlie.
Okay. I was born over in Fort Pierce, Florida, and graduated from high school, and then went to the University of Florida, and graduated there from 1957. This was back in the days when the draft was hot on everybody. You didn't know whether you're going to get drafted or not, and I was concerned about that. So there was a Marine recruiter that came by campus in his dress blues, and I went to talk to him. He said, well, just go ahead and take this test, and we'll see whether or not you qualify. And I said, well, okay, as long as I'm not really signing up. And so what happened was that was the hardest test I'd ever taken in my whole life. There's no way I'm going to be accepted in officer school. And so I didn't even get through in time. And it was several pages in a booklet, and I may have gotten through half of it. He says, time's up. And then what happened was he picked up the booklet and thumbed through it really fast, like in just a few seconds. Says, oh, you passed. So that's what happened. I ended up going to Marine Officer School, and I served in the Marines for 39 months. From there, in the Marines, I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, but I was also sent on cruises like in the Mediterranean and also down in the Caribbean, so I wasn't in Camp Lejeune that much. Got out of there. My dad was a lawyer, so I decided to go to law school. Graduated there in '63, and then I went to work for my dad, who was in the cattle business as well as being a lawyer. In fact, I was in the cattle business too with him. And so I went to work for him and with him in both businesses. So as things happened, he died shortly thereafter. And so I was at two ranches to worry about, one in Glades and one in Hendry, plus carry on a law practice. And what you couldn't do either one adequately. So I had the governor appointed me as state attorney of the 19th Circuit, elected state attorney. And I served there and for 4 years. And then there was an opening down in the 20th Circuit, which is right abutting 19th Circuit. And a chance to be a judge in there, and due to the fact that I had two ranches and a home in Glades County, I said, sure, I'll do that. And so I got appointed by the governor, and that's how I got where I was.
Which governor was that?
It was Governor Claude Kirk.
And when you were in the 19th Circuit, was the 20th Circuit in existence yet, or did the 20th come out of the 19th somehow?
Yeah, actually what happened, I don't remember what circuit the 20th came out of. It's the one that was really big down the West Coast. And I was state attorney of the 19th Circuit, which is over on the East Coast. And they did, Okeechobee County, which is one of my counties, did a butt with the 20th Circuit at the Mississippi River. And that's how it kind of panned out that way.
So when was it that you came to Naples then?
Well, my first assignments were not in Naples. I was assigned to by Judge Gerald Sr. As we all know, Judge Gerald Jr. Recently retired. But anyway, his father assigned me to Glades, Hendry, and Charlotte County. And my main office being in Charlotte County. And I was the third circuit judge of the circuit. And so I would hold court in Punta and LaBelle, Clewiston, and Moore Haven. And I was really a circuit rider then, but I put a lot of miles on my car.
And what sort of training did they give you to be a judge at that time?
Nothing. I mean, it was lucky for me as far as being a trial lawyer. I prosecuted many, many cases, so I had a lot of trial experience. And so it wasn't as bad as somebody, say, was a bank attorney or somebody that didn't have very many, like motion practices or trial practice. So that's the difference. It was easier for me than I think it would be for the average lawyer.
How long were you a judge?
Let's see, active duty about 26 years, and then senior judge, I retired after the second bypass.
So you said that Judge Gerald Sr.
Mm-hmm.
had assigned you to those counties that you mentioned.
Right.
Can you kind of tell us about how your career progressed from there?
Right. Well, we kept getting judges as the circuit was growing, so based on the population, we would get new judges in. And I always did a lot of work for Harold Smith here in Collier County, and I really loved Naples. So when I got the chance, I moved to Collier County, and I had Collier County and Glades and Hendry. So that's how I got to Naples, just because I loved it.
Do you remember when that was?
It would be around 1974, I believe, something in that neighborhood.
What was Naples like at that time?
Wonderful. It's a lot better now than it was. I mean, it's a lot better then than it is now. Naples was like a sleepy little community. We did have our season, but it was really nothing compared to what we have today. And just a handful of lawyers here, and all the lawyers knew each other and got along well. So it was really a pleasure to be here.
Who do you remember as some of the lawyers that were practicing when you first came on the bench in Naples?
Well, there was Glenn Hickson Holly, there was Bland Taylor, George Vega, Tom Brown. I can't remember. There were others, but I just cannot remember who they were.
Do you have an idea about how large the Bar Association might have been at that time?
Not over 50 or 60. That's just a guess, but I would guess that.
Now, when you first came on the bench in Naples, how were you welcomed by the attorneys?
I was welcomed very, very well. I got a good sense, first of all, that I was dealing with good lawyers, and I assume they thought I was okay as a judge. I kept getting elected without opposition, so
It's always a good sign.
that's always a good sign.
Were you invited to interact with the Bar Association, invited to functions and that sort of thing?
Oh yeah. That was a constant thing. Anytime there was a major bar meeting, that I would attend that.
Tell us about the level of professionalism or sophistication in the practice in Naples at that time.
Well, everything was really a casual attitude. The lawyers knew each other. They were civil to each other. They trusted each other. I've seen $1 million deals done with a handshake in my chambers after they settled the case, after I met with them. And, and then instead of drawing up all these papers, one of them was have their client come in and sign a deed or sign something, and that would be the end of it. So it was very relaxing in those days.
That's actually been a common theme that everyone has mentioned so far, doing things on a handshake.
Yeah, absolutely.
What sort of assignments did you do? Criminal, civil, everything? How was it then?
Well, by that time I got down here, there were two circuit judges, and that was Harold Smith and myself. And what we did to start with, we split everything 50-50. Then later on, we decided, well, he'll take criminal, I will take criminal, and he will take the civil. And that's the way that we split it up until we kept getting more judges down here. And then we went back to Harold's way, where we, everybody had everything. Everybody had a slice of the pie. All the circuit judges did.
Was there any particular area that was your preference?
Well, I was an old prosecutor and I loved criminal law. So,
And why? What was it that you liked about it?
well, it was very interesting. You're dealing with people that are charged with crimes. They're on trial for either their life or for some time in jail. And to tell you the truth, the law was much simpler than the civil side of it was. I mean, everything, you had a lot of cases to go by. You had a lot of statutes, and you had your criminal rules and all that. And it was a lot similar, or it was very easy compared to civil law. Of course, if I'd have been a civil trial lawyer, I felt the same way about trials and hated criminal, but I did love criminal.
What sorts of changes did you see over the years on the bench?
Well, of course, the Bar Association grew and grew and grew. And what happened was the local lawyers were still get along really good. Everybody was civil, but as more as we got, then things kind of turned around, and it was kind of hectic between the lawyers. I would sense that, although I was not directly involved. But we first started getting an influx from the East Coast attorneys. And I think they were always in a Donnybrook over there because they thought they could come over here and run over the local hick lawyers and snow the judge. And boy, that just didn't go, So that's the way I saw it evolved over the years.
Was there anyone that was a mentor to you as your career developed?
Yeah. Judge Smith was Judge Harold Smith, Judge Harold Stanhope Smith, and he was an icon of a man, and he was the judge I spent a lot of time in and observed how he acted in court, and how his respect for the lawyers and their respect for him. And so I kind of modeled my way that I acted in court from Harold. He's a most interesting man. He served in World War II and also in Korea, and he was just an outstanding man. He was wonderful.
What motivated you to go to law school?
My dad. My dad was a lawyer, and I said before, we were in the cattle business. So, I wouldn't have to worry about a job when I got out of law school, and I could go to work for him. And he started me off at the top wages in St. Lucie County at the time, and that was $100 a week. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
That's something that's changed over the years.
And I was one of the top new lawyers in town as far as getting paid.
Are there any favorite stories or cases that stand out in your mind that you could tell us about?
Well, I'll never forget the first case that I tried as a judge, and it was up in Fort Myers. Excuse me. And it was a first-degree murder case that Judge Gerald had assigned to me. And we had really good lawyers in that case. It was first degree. Jack Schoonover was the prosecutor, Judge Schoonover, and circuit judge, district court of appeal, and then there was Bill Nelson, who at that time was a public defender, and he later became a circuit judge. But that was a long, hard case. It was what I'd call an Italian divorce, where a guy catches his wife in bed with another man, and he kills both of them. And anyway, Jack got a manslaughter out of it. So, divorce Italian style.
They didn't start you out with anything easy.
Well, actually, I tried as a prosecutor several first-degree murder cases, so I knew really how to do that.
Okay. What sorts of problems were there facing the bar back at the time when you started on the bench in Collier County?
You know, I don't know. Of course, being on a bench, you're not with the inner workings of the attorneys and all that. I know there's always has been a need to have hearings and trials faster. That was the position then, and that's the position now, because of the fact that you take a case, and it's going to probably take you a year to go to trial, and then if there's appeal, it's going to take you another year on that. So I think that's an ongoing problem. I really do.
You mentioned the first case that you ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Any other most memorable courtroom experiences, interesting parties, or anything of that nature that you could share with us?
Well, I remembered a bailiff that we used to have in the old courthouse. This was probably about the mid-'70s. His name was Arnold, and during a trial he'd have a habit of going to sleep in his place beside me. And so one day we were trying this case, coming back after lunch, and I looked over, I heard him first, and I looked over, and he just let loose a war whoop, and didn't wake up. And I threw a paper clip at him, and he went kind of like that, thinking it was a bug or something on it. Then he was quiet for a couple of minutes, and then you go again, and I would throw another paper clip at him. And by that time, the jurors were kind of snickering over there. And that got me started snickering too and laughing. We all were having a good laugh about him. So finally I walked him out of the courtroom and I said, Arnold, you're going to have to quit eating so much food for lunch. You're embarrassing yourself, you're embarrassing the court and everything else. And he apologized profusely and all that. And so he was a wonderful man. He was a great bailiff, but he just couldn't stay awake after lunch.
If you had it to do over again, would you do anything differently?
No, I can't really think of anything right offhand. Things kind of played out, and I think it played out well,
What advice would you give to young lawyers starting out today?
Well, I think it's very hard to bridge the gap when you get out of law school and you go into a firm or even private practice. It's going to take a young lawyer just getting started. He's going to have a lot to learn, and that's going to take time. And he is going to probably feels that he has to work at night and on the weekends and all that. But my point is, forget that so much. Stay with your family. Be with your family. They want to see you every now and then. And I think that would cause a lot of problems if they just kept up this type of work where they didn't really feel that they couldn't catch up and they had to do this and they'd have to do that. And of course, things were harder for them to do that. But I'd always tell them, hey, you got to spend more time with your family.
That's the most important thing.
It is, and exactly the only other thing I could comment on would be preparation. You've got to be prepared for the most simple motion to the really a hard trial. And as far as a bench trial, I like to be treated like a law student, and then the lawyers are my law teachers. They're my professors. And that's the way I'd like the lawyers to present that to me, And I think the lawyers kind of got the idea that that's what I like. I like the bottom line first, and let's see how we got to the bottom line. So that's the way that kind of played out.
We've asked the folks we've been interviewing to comment on the evolution of advertising by lawyers that you've seen throughout your career, and your thoughts on lawyer advertising.
2 words: it sucks. That's the absolute truth. It sickens me to see our profession get on TV, on these advertisements that you see, and it's just not professional. We've turned in from an honored profession to some of these lawyers look like they're selling used cars and all that when they get on TV. But we're not professional as we used to be. It's more business oriented, you know, and going for so you can get the most clients, and undoubtedly advertising works, you know, for getting clients. But I just don't see it. I remember one time in Fort Pierce, there was a lawyer that donated $25 to one of the civic clubs, and the civic club was having a blotter, and where they had compliments of so and so and so, and unbeknown to him, they put in Charles Stone, attorney at law, and the local bar just jumped over him. And so we had a trial, and I was defending him. And I had all the witnesses that I could find saying that, no, that he didn't say it for us to put that in there, that we did that on our own, and they dropped it. So that's how bad it was at one time. I know my dad, he would roll over in his grave if he knew this, you know.
It seems relatively mild compared to what we have today, to put somebody's name on a blotter.
Yeah.
That caused a stir.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was a big deal.
Can you share with us any pet peeves or things that went on in your courtroom that bothered you, that you didn't like to see from the lawyers?
I didn't like to see the lawyers be late for court, and it was everybody's there. Not only am I waiting, but you got the, you know, like court reporters, the bailiffs, the witnesses all hanging out there, and then we're waiting for a lawyer to show up so we can get started. That used to be a pet peeve with me, and I just kind of let it go in the civil cases. But in criminal cases, I would find the lawyer $1 a minute. And so that they were had hardly anybody tardy after that.
Word got out.
Yeah, word got out. In the very first time that I started that policy, Jerry Brock he was a prosecutor. He was always late. Every day Jerry was late, and I announced my new policy. And so from then on, Jerry was right on time, but the very first time I did my fine was one of the court reporters were late, and I was after Jerry, and I got a court reporter.
Got a court reporter instead?
Yeah.
I think you've given us some great memories and insights. Travis, was there anything else that we needed to ask about that you remember?
I think that's good.
That's terrific. Thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you.
That was great.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's good to see you guys too.
Wonderful to